Good afternoon and welcome to our policy session on April 14, 2020. And Gary, what's up first?
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. We have a full agenda for you today on issues. We'll start with roll call. Chair Bernard.
Here.
Commissioner Schrader.
Here.
Commissioner Humberston.
Here.
Commissioner Fisher.
Here.
Commissioner Savas.
Here.
Thank you, Commissioners. We'll start, as always, with a COVID-19 update. We'll start with Nancy Bush, Director of Disaster Management and Incident Commander of our Emergency Operations Center. Go ahead, Nancy.
So thank you, and good morning, everyone. As usual, I will start out with some of the numbers that we have here in Oregon. So we have 1,584 positives for the whole state. There's 29,537 negatives statewide, and there are 53 deaths statewide. In Clackamas County, we have 132 of those positives, 2,658 of the negatives, and 3 of the deaths. Multnomah County has 398 positives, 6,850 negatives, and 19 of the deaths. Washington County has 360 positives, 4,195 negatives, and 7 deaths. And I just want to talk a little bit as we're thinking that we're going to be going into the peak and then probably plateauing for a little bit at that peak, which is the modeling that we're seeing. And I was looking at what is going on with our hospitals and trying to, consider what their bed count is, what beds are available. And just to let you know a couple of numbers here, the adult ICU beds, and this is statewide, there's a total of 751 statewide, and 332 of those are now open as of this morning when I looked. The non-ICU beds for adults, statewide, there's 6,974, and we have 2,094 of those available. The modeling is still showing that if we continue to do social distancing and are vigilant about that, that we should not have a shortage of hospital resources during the event. However, all of the local agencies and here in the region, we do continue to plan for if we need to place vulnerable populations. For example, if they aren't sick enough to stay in the hospital or they're waiting for a test. So we do already have one place where we're able to put those individuals, and we're working on get a couple of other places with Health Share Oregon, and that's been moving very quickly over the past couple of days. We continue to work and getting some information out to our communities for like Spanish-speaking migrant workers, and trying to make sure that that messaging is getting to them. We're working on a couple of things that are going to be specific for some of those communities, and I'll give more about that later whenever we have some things set up here, and some of them may be region-wide that we're working on with a region and pushing that forward. Lastly, I just want to talk about the cities. I had a call with the emergency managers of the cities this morning, and they have a lot of good questions. There's a lot of good things going on out there. Just to let people know that they're already looking ahead too, like we are. It's like, what do we need to, even over the summer, it's like, do we need to cancel certain things? Or when do we decide when we need to cancel gatherings or the July 4th type of stuff, or do we leave it? Some of the cities have actually already canceled everything through August. They either canceled it or moved it out. So you'll probably hear more about that too, whenever we talk to the city managers and mayors and stuff as well. But there's a lot of good work going on, a lot of concern, and a lot of wanting to really work together for messaging and, working side by side as we work through this and also start to work into recovery. And that is my report. Are there any questions?
Commissioner Humbertson, Mr. Chair.
Nancy, I was just curious, do you have, what's the availability of testing? Are we still not getting tests?
So there is more testing being done. And of course, public health is still doing the job here, it's like if you are a close contact and still doing those investigations. And the hospitals are expanding their testing. We're not doing drive-through testing, but there definitely is an expansion at the hospitals and other clinics where there's being more testing done.
Are we getting tests, and from where?
So you mean, where is our testing supply coming from?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the national situation, what we're always hearing is there's not enough tests available for the jurisdictions to do testing. The federal government's not getting them out to us, or the companies are not getting them out to us. What's going on in that situation? Are we going to get enough tests where we can do much more massive testing?
I don't have the answer to that. I know that we continue to get tests in to do what we're doing now. I don't have an answer to that question, and we have several calls a week for public health, and unfortunately we don't have the answer to that question.
Okay, but that suggests to me that in terms of talking to the community, we should assume that the numbers are conservative numbers, given that we don't have full-scale testing.
Yes, I think that is true.
Thank you.
Anybody
So
else?
Nancy, I have a question. Yeah, my
Okay.
hand's raised. Kevin, I do poke the raised hand. Do you not see it, or?
No, I see it. So it's you and then
Oh, okay.
Commissioner Fisher and then Commissioner Savas.
Okay, so a couple of things here. What about antibody testing?
So that's interesting. I just had a question yesterday too from someone else, and I did talk to Dr. Present, and antibody testing right now is in development. It is, they're still working on the efficacy of that test. And I think that there is a local hospital, she was needing to check into this, that has volunteered to be a part of the research for antibody testing, but I have to confirm that.
And the reason I mention that is that if people have the antibodies and they're immune and we could test, that would open things up sooner for people that, but then Jim just mentioned supposedly there may be something where you can re-get it. I don't know what that would say, but if you have antibodies, the titer of antibodies, you could really start moving people back, into work environments without as a worry about whether or not they're going to infect anybody or anyone else. The other question I have is I am really worried about our rural migrant communities. So what other kind of specific outreach are we doing to let those folks that are working in our farms and fields and out there in the rural areas, inform them of what's been happening?
So right now we're trying to work through the groups that, like faith groups, that
Okay.
they trust, because they don't trust government, and we're trying to make sure we go through those avenues, and like through radio stations, so those where they can get good information from us from a source that they trust.
Okay, thank you.
Paul. Oh, Fisher, Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you. So Nancy, I've been hearing anecdotally about people that were presumed to have COVID and then recovered and then got sick again, but still testing negative because the tests aren't working, but the doctors are diagnosing with COVID based on the symptoms that they show. Are you hearing anything about the test not working or false negatives or people getting the illness again after they've recovered? Are you hearing any of those things?
So I don't have my doctor here with me, so I can't answer that fully. I know that what I've been reading and some of the things that that we're seeing in through some of the public health and medical channels, but I don't feel like I can really speak on that. And I don't know, I'll work with Administrator Schmidt. Maybe we can get Dr. Present here again to answer some of those questions in the next session or on Tuesday of next week.
Okay, and then my next question that you might not be able to answer is, if people do show antibodies, is that going to matter, or is this possibly one of those viruses that just lives in people's bodies and flares up like a canker sore or other types of viruses? Do we know anything else?
there's so much that we don't know. And we don't know, even if you have antibodies, we don't know if you can get it again or not. Those are just, it's a novel virus, and those are things we still don't know.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, Nancy, I go to the OHA website every day, and I've been looking at the numbers. And early on, we were seeing Marion County have a big, huge spike, and then that kind of subsided. And now Multnomah County is seeing probably the biggest spikes, apparently surpassing Washington County, because Washington County was the first, followed by Marion, and then now Multnomah. So I'm not suggesting that we measure everyone's peaks or anything, but my watching a lot of news, including this morning, talking about the FDA approving this morning saliva testing, which appears to maybe have a just as good a success rate as anything else. We'll be able to do a lot more testing. But what was discussed in that session was about tracking the contacts at people that have tested positive. And I get, this is probably the most frequent question I get every day from the phone calls that I'm receiving, is what are we doing to, because we're not hearing that, right? So I think the uncertainty and whether or not that's being done is worrying a lot of people. For example, if a local grocery store, someone tests positive, what are we doing to alert anyone? What are we doing to actually track that person's contacts to make sure that they're not spreading it? Is that activity happening? Because we were doing it, it seemed we were pretty, at least on the West Coast, we're actively pursuing those contacts to make sure people were quarantining themselves and so on. But the media's been pretty silent on that recently. How come?
I'm not sure why the media is silent on that. We do continue to do the contact tracing, just as you said. And working with individuals, those that need to be tested are getting tested if they have a close contact with a COVID known. And then others who may not have as close contact, talking to them, asking them to quarantine themselves. That is happening. And I don't know why the media is not picking up on that.
Is there a place that anyone can go to not necessarily a responsibility of the media, but if they don't have a source for that, is there a place to go that one can learn that, the public?
I'm trying to think right now. I would have to look into that, Commissioner, and see. I think CDC has information on that. I don't think we have anything specifically on our website, but I can get back to you. I do know CDC has information.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just put it very, very simply. I mean, if people learn that maybe at a local grocery store, again, I'll use that example. A local grocery store, someone tested positive. Is there the contact? Is there precautions being taken? And therefore, people have a choice of going to a different grocer, right? But if they don't have that information, it's not out there, or it's not accessible at our level.
Yeah.
On a public website. How do people protect themselves?
Yeah. So we actually, we do. We follow HIPAA regulations, which I know we've talked about a little bit before, but that prohibits us from saying that XYZ grocery store has a COVID positive. They work with those close contacts in that store and who that person may have been in close contact with. But no, there is no website. Understanding your question, there is no website where you can go to that says XYZ grocery store has a positive. That's not available.
Okay.
So, Nancy, the Tri-County chairs last night spoke, and we're going to schedule a meeting with yourself and our various doctors to talk about what we do next. And I think next week we're going to do that, where all three of us can be online with all 6 of you guys and figure out what's the next step. I know the governor's doing a similar thing. and I'm sure we'll stick with what the governor does. But for the tri-counties, we want to be prepared and want your feelings about what the next step is. So I know that's being scheduled. Deborah Kafori was going to arrange it through our staff. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
All right, were there any other questions on this?
Commissioner Fisher, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, so Chair Bernard, I think that's a really great idea because as we know how this is all unfolded, the state level reaches out to us for information on what's happening at the local level that helps inform their decisions at the state level. So I really like it that you and the other chairs are getting together with our experts to really look, because every county, every area of the state is going to be different. We have, and us in Clackamas County, we are unique in many ways from Multnomah and Washington County, and we really need to hear from our local folks and think very thoughtfully about how we reopen things. So thank you for organizing that.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Nope. Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate your work. All right, Gary.
Thank you, Nancy, as well. So commissioners, you have decided to temporarily close our public buildings and ask most employees to work remotely through Monday, April 20th, which is next week. I would recommend to you that you continue to extend that plan for an additional 2 weeks until Monday, May 4th. As you know, now is not the time to slow down on our plans to help stop the spread of COVID-19, both for our employees and for the public. So I'm seeking your approval to extend the temporary closure of most county buildings until Monday, May 4th.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to extend the closure till May 4th. Any further discussion? There, I will just add that there was some recommendation that we go longer, but I think this approach has been working quite well. And so I agree. Any other discussion? All those in favor say,
Mr. Chair.
poll.
Commissioner Humbertson,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Martha,
Commissioner.
where'd you go?
She took her video off.
You're on mute,
Sorry,
Martha.
Aye.
Okay. Chair Bernard.
Aye. Motion carries.
Great. Thank you,
Next item.
Next, commissioners, you have asked that the other elected officials of Clackamas County come before you to present brief updates on how they are handling COVID-19 with their operations. Last week you heard from Sheriff Roberts. Today you have District Attorney Foote and Treasurer Nava. If you could please give brief updates. Let's start with District Attorney John Foote.
Good morning.
Morning.
In explaining what we're doing, I'd like to kind of put it in the context of how our office operates. We're sort of the link between police, law enforcement, and the courts. So what our two partners does affects us, and dramatically. So what we've seen from law enforcement is a complete drop, or large drop, in the number of people they're arresting or citing for crimes. And so that has reduced our intake. In most areas, domestic violence has actually gone up, not surprisingly, and but the rest have dropped. So our intake is down. And then on the other end, the courts have decided to close most operations. So we've only had a couple of trials in 3 weeks, only when the court is forced to, because the defendant won't agree to a set over. Almost always a court trial, not a jury trial. And we are still doing court appearances because there's a docket somewhere every hour, in which a docket is when a court calls the court to session and there are parties on both sides and there's an agenda with cases on the docket to be called and discussed. A lot of those are being done by video, but we have someone in the courthouse, well, more than one, to cover those when we need them. Now, that's kind of how it's worked. Our office was uniquely situated. For about the last 15 years, we have been firmly committed to technology. Even though I'm not a technology person, anyone can figure out they can make us much leaner and more efficient, because we're just in the business of passing information, other things too, but we get information, we pass information. So we have gone through kind of revolutionary changes in our technology. The last step was over a year ago. We made all of our files electronic, not paper anymore. That was a very elaborate year-long process of going through each document that's in the file and procedurally moving it to electronic, going back for the next one, making sure we didn't have any glitches. And it took quite a while. It was very methodical. But the result was about a year ago, we stopped creating paper files. And again, it's much more efficient. It's a big leap of faith though. So we had a lot of people to thank for that, Brandy and her team, and then everybody else. Everything was built on Teams. So when this hit, we were the only office that was in this situation. So we also made the transition from desktops over the last few years to everyone having a laptop on a docking station. It works the same, but it means they can go home and work. So when this hit, we were ready. And we put that plan into effect. So our folks have been working at home for the most part, and then there's a rotation of every week set up where certain people come in to cover certain dockets or certain kind of cases. Make sure we have people in the office when we need to. But that's how it's worked. We've managed to work down a lot of backlog. The problem is cases are not being disposed of very quickly, especially serious cases. And so when this thing stops, we're going to have to sit down with the court and figure out what we do about the backlog. We've done this before, back in 2003, a couple of years after I started. I don't know how many people remember this, probably Martha for sure, but the state said they had a big shortfall, and so they agreed that they would close the court one day a week for the last 4 or 5 months of the year. And we had to put all these cases on hold that were coming up, misdemeanors and low-level felonies. And they came back on the docket in July of that year, 2003. So we went to the court and set up a special system where we could negotiate those cases with a little bit better plea deals to get people an incentive, and then help the courts, get the courts to help us to convince people to do it. And we were able to get rid of the backlog really pretty well. And we had a new system of negotiating cases that also is now permanently in effect. So it was an opportunity to actually get better. I think we're going to have to do something, maybe not quite that fundamental because we've done a lot, but that's coming. I just don't know yet. So we have victim advocates in the office every day because people come in for restraining orders and stalking orders, and they need to talk to somebody. So anyway,
Thank you.
I'll stop there.
Thank you. Any questions?
Chair Bernard, Commissioner Savas.
Commissioner Savas.
You're on mute, Commissioner.
Sorry about that. Getting back to trials and so forth. Chris, I got a summons for a circuit court for May 4th. Is that actually something I just attend? And if so, how is that? How do I attend?
Who did you ask? Me?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you said Chris, so I was pretty sure that wasn't my name.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Is it a criminal case or a civil case?
Doesn't say. I don't know. Hang on.
Well, there's a phone number on it. Why don't you drop me an email and I'll find out, Paul.
Well, I guess my question for the bigger picture is, will court cases go on? And will juries, how will juries work and attend?
Well, the court isn't really allowing jury trials right now. So now it gets a little problematic. It depends on how serious the case is. If it's, because the way our system has worked for a long time, every case is serious to the people involved, don't get me wrong. But misdemeanors and low-level felonies, people aren't in jail pending trial. They just aren't. And so setting a case over or delaying it isn't the same problem as if somebody's in custody. Because if somebody's in custody waiting trial, they have a right to a speedy trial because they're sitting in custody waiting. So the ones in custody are the more problematic ones. The good news is there are fewer of them, but they're more problematic. And the longer this goes, the more there's going to be a problem. Now, the courts have waived all sorts of rules they have about getting things done on time. And it's the Supreme Court, so I don't know who you would appeal to if you didn't like it. But so they're letting things being delayed a lot longer than they would normally. So that's the kind of the mix. And then it's just an individual question about the case. Because ultimately what decides whether a case goes to trial is not us, it's the defendant. They're the ones who decide. And unfortunately, we have people who know that the more they delay, the more chances are that it's not going to ever happen and they'll go away. So that's not new. That's been around for a long time. So it's this mix that we're dealing with. So the best thing is to look at your subpoena. It'll have a phone number on it. If it's a case of ours, it'll be our office. And you should call and ask. And we should have somebody available to answer that question. And you can send it to me, and I can ask somebody to check for you if you'd also like.
Commissioner Fisher?
Kevin, so I'm just curious, you said that domestic violence cases are up. Have you kept any statistics? And the reason why I ask is the sheriff reported the statistics increase for us, and the Association of Oregon Counties really appreciated those numbers, and we're feeding those to the national level. So being able to quantify how this pandemic is affecting us at the local level is very important, and it informs policy up the line. So I'm just wondering if we know more.
Yes, I believe John Wentworth we got asked last week, and John sent it to somebody in the county commission office. It might have been Kevin.
It was, Mr. Attorney, and I forwarded that on to all the commissioners.
Yes, you have those numbers. They'd be updated if we asked today, but the general thing is they are up. Not surprising.
No.
The officer-involved shooting we had night before last was a very, very dangerous domestic violence situation. The guy was shooting a shotgun off in a house, and he pointed it at the officers. When they came in, they heard the shots and had to come in. So yeah, that's what happens when people are cooped up together.
Yep. Thank you, John. Any other questions? Thank you, John. And I believe we're moving on to Brian, correct?
Yes, Treasurer Brian Nava, please, your update.
Thanks, Gary. I was told I have 45 minutes. Is that accurate?
No.
Well, good morning, commissioners. I hope everyone had a good Easter. I'll try to keep this around the 10-minute range. For the record, I am Brian Nava, Clackamas County Treasurer, and newly appointed Vice Principal of Nava Homeschool Elementary. I just want to take a minute. Huge kudos out to all the teachers out there. I have two sisters that are teachers, sister-in-law and my mother-in-law used to teach in Clackamas County as well. We've been doing the whole homeschool thing for a few weeks, and I can't imagine doing it with 20 to 30 kids every week. So that's a big shout out to those guys. Also, thanks to Technology Services staff for getting our entire office set up remotely. Management in our office, similar to John Foote, District Attorney Foote, has always been set up to work remotely, but getting staff set up remotely for us and almost the entire county in short order, I know has been a challenge, and they have been doing great. I mean, listen, we are preparing we're hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst. I know Chair Bernard and Commissioner Savas, having your own business, You guys likely remember the old green bar, general ledger, filling that out, and then handwriting every check for payroll, handwriting for bills. It is something we explored during our earthquake COOP planning. It's not desirable. So having access to all our systems, network drives, printers, and more is much appreciated. The Daves, Richard McCord, TS, they're doing a great job. We are 100% up and running remotely, staying home for the most part and staying safe. You know, kind of moving on with my staff, you know, I played football at Linfield College, and one of the coaches said, during adversity, it can break you or make you if you let it. The choice is yours. And I tell you what, staff and management have been quick and agile in this uncertain time. Our efforts have made this process relatively seamless for the public, the county, and the taxing districts we serve. Also, the information from Dr. President, H3S, and the EOC has been fantastic. I mean, there's a lot of heroes over there at the EOC, and Nancy Bush, you're definitely one of them in my book. I'll also echo the sentiments of a lot of my colleagues related to those listening sessions. I'm getting a lot of feedback from friends. It is great that we continue to provide staff and public with these listening sessions where the public has the opportunity to provide comments and ask questions. I'm looking forward to the one this Thursday afternoon for that matter as well. Kind of my last little thanks here goes to county administration, of course. The transparency from county administration, I think, is important and very much appreciated. A lot of what my office does is to depend upon the work and the relationships of the departments throughout the county. And I've experienced a lot of the departments coming together as one county to serve the public and be successful during this pandemic times. As far as our office goes, like John kind of said with his, we're actually essentially the bank for the county. And overall, our office aligns best with the county's goal of building public trust through good government. The board's master strategic plan states, public trust is the currency of good government. I've always thought that it's not so coincidental that the Treasurer's Office is actually ensuring the safety of the taxpayers and the county's currency. And as you likely know, most of our functions, like other elected officials throughout the county, are statutorily mandated. Currently, our operations have been adequately set up to ensure compliance with all of our statutorily mandated requirements. One of those major requirements is our tax distribution that we do every month, and then weekly during November. We distribute the tax collected by the assessor's office to the over 125 taxing districts. This includes the county, its component units, 16 cities, 3 community colleges, 5 educational service districts, multiple fire districts, water districts, and other miscellaneous taxing districts like vector control, TriMet, more. By providing these complete and accurate timely tax distribution, it helps ensure that the county and its over 125 taxing districts have the funding they need to help maintain a vibrant economy. I'm happy to report that the tax distribution has been prepared and will be going out on time. This was definitely one of my top priorities as we were preparing to work entirely remotely. And I'd like to thank the Tax Assessor's Office for working with us so well to ensure timely, complete, and accurate distributions. As you can imagine, Commissioners, our 125 plus taxing districts at this point in time may solely be relying on the distribution to keep their essential and critical functions running during this pandemic. In terms of cash receipts and deposits, this is a kind of another issue we struggled with on how to ensure the safety of receiving funds. A great portion of the public still prefers to provide money in cash or check. As some of you heard at last year's budget presentation, US Bank chose to no longer provide lockbox services. That left us with the opportunity to sign up a new lockbox service provider. We worked closely with Marion County and Washington County to select Retail Lockbox as our lockbox service provider. This vendor gets nearly all of our non-electronic tax payments and then provides the funds to Clackamas County. One critical thing we negotiated in the contract was ensuring a good disaster management plan. I'm happy to report that to date, our payments have been uninterrupted and processed normally. So along those lines too, was just navigating how to process cash and checks received by our departments throughout the county. We partnered and are still partnering with a number of departments to set up alternative methods to receive payments, such as via ACH and EFT, and alternative methods of making deposits for cash and checks received. This initiative to go electronic in processing payments started well before this pandemic and will continue after the pandemic as well. For example, just last week, we were working with H3S to set up their largest fee-for-service provider on receiving ACH payments. We also, just during this pandemic, have worked with Resolution Services, DTD, CCSO, BCS, and the clerk's office. And I intend to work with more departments to make sure that we can continue to be electronic. It may be a little dramatic, but I do truly believe some of the measures we have put in place are going to save lives, and probably are saving lives today. So despite all this, we will still receive physical checks and cash, and we'll need to process payments on checks, including payroll checks to our employees and other checks to our vendors. As such, Nancy Wilson, my deputy treasurer, sorry for not introducing you at the beginning, Nancy, and I are going in on Wednesdays where we'll accept deposits and process checks. We are on call 24/7. We've promised our departments that if you give us a 2-hour notice, we'll come in day or night. Of course, I have to hear my phone and actually wake up, which I'm a pretty heavy sleeper, so that doesn't always happen, but we'll come in and do what needs to be done. We continue to work with accounts payable to try and identify other opportunities to process cash transaction electronically. And we are seeing some small and some very big successes that I think will help make the county more efficient and effective, not just today, but for years to come. We also provided other methods to make these deposits that cannot be done electronically by we expanded our armored car service, and I actually just sent an email to Andrew Naylor in County Counsel's office asking about a change in the contract where we're able to work with our bank to potentially provide cash night drop deposits free of charge. That's something we work closely with our bank quite a bit on, so that will help limit the contact between personnel at the bank and our personnel, and hopefully, again, keeping that social distancing in mind. So essentially the work that has been done by staff, my colleagues, and especially TS has allowed for treasury operations. And this is what I've kind of been telling everybody. They've been adjusted, but they have not been interrupted. So I talked pretty quick there. I thank you so much for your guys' time. Again, listening sessions is great. Leadership from county administration is great. EOC has been awesome. And more importantly, just all my colleagues and staff have been great to work with. I get nervous in these times about who steps up and who won't. And for the most part, everybody we've touched has just really stepped up to make this work for the county. So thanks. And if you guys have any questions, you can always email me, or I think, Gary, if we have some time, I'm happy to take some now as well.
Any questions?
Chair, you have Commissioner Savas.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, Brian, appreciate your report, very thorough, and appreciate all the good work you and your staff provide, and also appreciate your collaborative approach with all the other departments and so forth. Because of the unique role that the Treasurer's Office plays, so to speak, as the county's bank, if you will, are you monitoring? I know there's all different inputs, but you talked about payments. We talked about fees earlier today. A lot of different ways where revenue comes into the county and into your office. And I know that in some areas it's probably premature, like property tax statements, or property tax payments, for example, other than maybe people making their payments. But I'm wondering if you're going to be tracking, or have tracked, or going to be tracking in this unique situation, the cash flow, not cash per se, but the cash flow inputs from all these different sources that your office is responsible for.
Right. No, that's a great question, Commissioner, and actually right on point. So we do cash management activities daily. We're transferring funds between our various bank accounts, calling investments, LGIP, things of that nature. And then on top of that, we've been working with finance to implement a process to track those daily cash balances as well. Especially, obviously we're highlighting some of those functions or departments where they're on a more fee-for-service basis, where we are likely or already have seen those fee-for-services drop significantly or even to zero. So we actually have another meeting on Wednesday to just kind of hopefully finalize a little more detailed methodology, just to highlight, make sure we're pinpointing those specific departments and funds that could see some very low balances. And as you guys know, Nancy Wilson, Deputy Treasurer, has been in her position for 18 years. I think she continues to talk about, Paul, how she met you on your first day as Commissioner, and always reminisces about that. But this is not necessarily uncharted territory for the Treasurer's Office. When we went through the housing crisis, Sherry and Nancy worked very closely about monitoring our cash balances. So we are stealing a few of those ideas that had already been put in place to kind of ramp up the detail review that we do, just to make sure we stay on track. It's not absolute, but we have some good processes in place, and hopefully we'll get some good ones going forward as well.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? We need to get moving. All right. Thank you, Brian. And I'm glad you're not beating me to work every day.
just Wednesdays. Just Wednesdays right now.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yes, thank you all. So now we're going to follow the agenda. These are going to be really quick updates. Kevin Moss will help bring people in and out of the meeting. So next will be Laura Zentner, Kevin, and Commissioners, Laura will update you on a business recovery plan proposal to support our businesses during this time of COVID. So Laura, please go ahead.
Mike. There you go.
Good morning, Commissioners. Laura Zentner, Director of Business and Community Services. So today I am here to request your approval to move forward with two things. One is going to be about the Land Bank Authority, and the second is going to be to request your approval to move forward on a business, what I'm calling the Business Recovery Response Plan. So let me start with the Land Bank Authority. In order for us to implement a business recovery plan, we need funds. And so I'm going to be proposing that we take $500,000 from the Land Bank Authority and put that on hold indefinitely. We will need to notify our partners that assisted with the plan. We're going to need to work with the state of Oregon to potentially return the $300,000 that they gave us for the Land Bank Authority. And then we'll also have to notify the folks who applied to be on the board of the Land Bank Authority. So that would be the first topic. And do you have any questions on that?
No, it's too bad, but Ken, did you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'm assuming this is just putting it on hold until we get into a better situation financially.
Yeah, so again, I'm taking lottery dollars that would have gone to pay for the Land Bank Authority and hire the staff. So yes, we would be putting that on hold indefinitely. So it's just going to be a matter of how long it will take to get those funds back. And as you're probably aware, the lottery dollars are also not coming in right now due to what's happening. So I would anticipate probably 2 to 3 years potentially. It really could be on hold for quite a while, depending on what happens with this and how long it takes us to recover.
Thank you.
Okay. So next I'll talk about the actual plan, and there's 3 phases of it. As I think most of you are aware, you've seen that there's a lot of cities, there's Prosper Portland out there, and they're putting out these small grants and loan programs. And so we have been strategizing with our economic development team as to how could we do this for the county. And so again, we came up with shutting down the Land Bank Authority for right now. So the first phase of the plan is we would like to partner with an organization called MISO, and we'd like to put about $300,000 here. So just so you know what MISO is, it's Micro Enterprise Services of Oregon, and their mission is to improve the economic opportunities of the underserved and low-income individuals through entrepreneurship, education, and empowerment for the benefit of families in the greater community. So what they would do for us in partnership is, and they would manage all of this, and they've been doing it in Portland and Hillsborough and in Gresham, is they would manage a grant and loan program. So here's how we would envision that. The grants would be up to $1,500 for businesses that are meeting the established criteria, and I'll talk about the criteria in just a moment. And then there's going to be loans of up to $25,000 for businesses, again, meeting established criteria. And one of the things that's nice about MISO is they are a micro lender, and they have the ability to match our funds 3 to 1. So if we put in $100,000, there could be $400,000 available. So those of you, most of you, I think, know what a micro lender is, but just for the benefit of the audience, they lend in small amounts to low-income individuals and groups who can't obtain loans through traditional means, which would be the bank. So let me go to the next portion of this. So I want to talk about the criteria that we've brainstormed, and this is where I really would like some input from you guys. So we're thinking that these grants, again, which would be forgivable, and then the loans would go to the unincorporated area. It would be businesses that are 10 or less employees, $1 million in gross revenue or less. It would be businesses that have suffered a significant loss due to COVID-19. It would be definitely lower income. So MISO typically works with businesses that are 80% of the median family income. So we're recommending that we focus on that. Minority-owned businesses, vets, and then we'd also like to place a preference on childcare businesses, because we know we have a really big issue with that right now, and having childcare being able to stay open to service healthcare workers and just essential workers through this. So again, those grants would be small amounts, $1,500 forgivable. The loans, they would be required to be repaid with a 5% interest rate. And the great thing about the proposal that we got from MISO is they would be actually in our community. And we have a lot of sites where we could put them. Concord would be one, and they would be working with the community for an entire year, 2 to 3 individuals, 3 days a week. So that's what we're initially talking about. So do you have any questions on that, or do you have any criteria that we've missed?
I have a basic question, and that is, what capacity or resources do we have to serve how many people? I know that's a wide-ranging question, knowing that it could be up to $1 million in sales, for example, but how many, practically speaking, how many, and especially the fact that these loans may be forgivable, as you stated, how many people can we get grants? How many people can I actually serve?
So I mean, I don't know, if you divide 100,000 by $1,500, what is that? Because then that's the max, 1,500. So there could be smaller, they could do $500. It just depends on what they need.
Okay.
So it's not going to be a huge amount, but it will definitely, there will be an impact. And I think in the middle of this crisis, anything we can do to help, especially in the lower income community, minorities. These are the folks who aren't a lot of times able to get the money through the SBA and the other programs. They, again, are just falling through the cracks. And that's why we wanted to focus on this area.
Yeah, so I just wanted to state, whether it's this program or the CARES Act program for larger scale business and everything, I think that some people are thinking that it's a greater, bigger safety net than perhaps they might be, that it is, right? That it's going to be make everyone whole, which is not going to. So I think that just want to put that out there, the cautionary thing, that this is a little bit of help.
It's a little bit of help, but the really good thing is that they're going to be in our community for an entire year. They're going to be available to assist these businesses on a weekly basis. We've one of the things that they require is that we provide the space. So we've got Concord, we've got the aquatic facility. We could put them at the DSB. There's a lot of different places we could put them. So I'm really excited. The loan default rate that they talked about is 1%. That's much better than banks. So they really do ensure that the people that they're working with are educated and trained on how to run a business based on my conversations.
So I'd like to see their criteria a little bit lower on the number of employees, because the federal money and other monies are helping people that have employees, but the small business, single, one person or 2 people, they've got no help.
So it's 10 and under. So we could.
Yeah, it could be 1 or 2, but 10 or 5, you've got federal dollars that can help you. But when you get down to 1 or 2, there isn't any help. And those are the people that are really hurting. Anyway, who is next?
Commissioner Humbertson, then Administrator Schmidt, followed by Commissioner Fisher.
Okay.
One, can you send us a bullet point of the basic qualifications and also a link that people can access once it's available for people to access?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a whole application process, which MISO has already, they did it for Prosper Portland, they did it for the city of Hillsborough. So they've already got this program in place. So I will definitely, you will be very aware as we move forward and get everything in place.
And just let us know as soon as we can put it out to people that they can go to this link and apply, and that it's active for Clackamas County.
Yeah, we will be coordinating very closely with PGA to make sure that you're all involved. And we do
just a thought, do they coordinate with Workforce Partnership? Do they coordinate maybe with Clackamas Community College's Small Business Development Center? Or is that something we might want to hook them into?
So they're a micro lender, and right now they're very connected into the SBA. So very connected there. They're also a part of the IDA, which is the International Development Association, and then also the Community Development Financial Institution. That's why they're able to leverage, if we put $100,000 in, they're able to leverage that to $400,000 because of the access to federal resources that they have, being a micro lender serving this community that they serve.
Okay, thank you very much.
Gary.
Okay, so the second, sorry.
Sorry. So again, Laura's just seeking your high-level input today. She'll formally finalize the plan, which we'll bring back to you before we go live. So that's just the purpose of today. Thank you.
All right, Gary, Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Laura. I really love this. I like the criteria a lot. And Jim, I think it should be 10 and under because not all of the federal dollars for even those businesses can help with some of the really weird expenses that come up. So I wouldn't want to limit it to 1 or 2. I really want to keep as much as we can, whatever we can do to keep this economy moving and keeping people employed. And this is a great tool. I love being on these Zoom meetings because I can go online and look up MISO and look at their website and look at everything that they do. And I am just so inspired by this partnership, and I commend you for your high level thinking. And I just thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
What was next, Laura?
Okay, so the next piece of the phase 1 would be that we would like to really quickly
Jim,
get
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do have a question.
Okay.
And I'm having difficulty with the meeting again because I still am trying to get my laptop up and running. So I'm still working from my, my iPad, which is been nightmarish. So as I'm looking up MISO, they're micro lenders and they are essentially helping small business startups. So are they changing focus to just maintain businesses that are smaller businesses that are already extant? I'm just wondering, as I read this, yeah.
I think they're changing focus a little bit because of COVID-19. I think they're right now handling a lot more of the grants and the loans because of this situation. But that's why I said this is there's 2 components to it. There's that they'll be in the community for an entire year, and I would love to have a partnership with them going forward. I just think they're a great organization.
Okay.
They have changed a little bit their focus.
Okay, that's kind of what I was wondering. Have you run this by any of the chambers at all?
No, we are actually been moving, fairly quickly to even get the proposal that we got. I'll talk a minute about phase 2 and 3 of our plan, which will involve the chamber.
Right.
You're welcome. The second component is an online mapping tool. We have been working with GIS, and what we'd like to put together is a site where folks can go and they can find out if businesses are open. And it would show their hours, it would show if they have curbside pickup, if they deliver, because people are having a really hard time finding out which businesses are open. So it'll help people that want to locate a business as well as help those businesses to keep their product moving. The city of Seattle has done it, so we looked at theirs, and then Hillsborough also has that. So we think we've worked with we've already talked to GIS, and they think they can get that up and running fairly quickly. So just wanted you to know that's the second component of the phase 1. So phase 2 is just going to be working with CCC, and we'd like to put $100,000 into that piece. And this is the workforce piece. So we would like to partner with them to help with retraining of the many people that are going to be displaced because of COVID-19. So we want to get that partnership. And I don't have a lot of details about that, but I just want you to be aware that we're going to be working on that, and we'll bring something forward to you on that. And then finally, phase 3 is a business recovery plan for the county. And there's 3 components to this, and this is a little bit longer term, but the first component is the businesses, a recovery plan for the businesses. And then the second would be community development. And the third is the housing component. And so the plan here would be to take $100,000, hire a consultant to put together a plan. They would begin with the businesses plan. And then if that goes well, then we'll move on to the housing and the community development portion of the plan. Now we would need to work in partnership, obviously, with H3S and with the Emergency Operations Center and Nancy on this, because there's really critical components that both of those folks need to be involved in. We also would like to, when we do this, set up a task force that would include, and this is where the cities would come in, the chambers, EDC, CCBA, OCBA, all of those organizations. We would need a couple commissioners to be on this task force to advise this, how we put together this business plan. The consultants would, of course, be working with all of those groups to put together that plan. And so again, I don't have a lot of details other than this is what we brainstormed for the county to move forward with a business recovery response plan.
It sounds great, and we need to keep moving, but Paul, did you have a question?
Yeah, just real quick, I'm happy to be, if I can assist and use my business experience, I'm happy to be one of those commissioners.
Okay.
I have my hand up as well.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I would strongly suggest that you work with Clackamas Workforce Partnership as well, because they are our workforce arm that funnels federal dollars locally. I know you mentioned the college, but I think the college and CWP work very closely together as well. And I'd also like to be one of those commissioners that is on the task force, just to let you know. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Laura. Laura will bring back a formalized plan with everything she discussed. This was just an update for you, and then we'll have that before you before we go forward. Thank you, Laura, very much. So
Thank
yes,
you.
we're way behind schedule, everyone, but commissioners, I'd like your indulgence to go until at least 11:20 this morning. We'll get through as many of these as we can. We'll stick to the agenda. So next is Rich Swift, Housing Authority of Clackamas County. I forwarded you an email from Rich with 2 quick check-ins he needs to make with you today. So I hope you had a chance to read that. So as soon as Rich is on, and it looks like Jill Smith too. Whoever the staff is, please go ahead.
Both your mics are off, so you know. Richard, Jill, your mics are off.
Let me see if I can just unmute them myself.
There's Rich is off.
Right, go ahead, Jill and Rich and Stephen.
Okay, sorry about that. When I got the invite, my laptop freaked out. So let's see if I can get the video started here as well.
There you go.
There we go. So we have 2 things in front of us today regarding the Housing Authority. So let me start off by just saying good morning to Chair Bernard, the commissioners, Mr. Schmidt. So we've got 2 things in front of us for the Housing Authority. Both of these things relate to our hillside development. The first is, well, actually, I shouldn't say the first because I don't have the agenda up in front of me.
Rich, it's Stephen here. I'm actually on. There were technical difficulties. I got bumped out and I'm back in as well.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. So we have the gross maximum price for Walsh, who is our constructor, construction contractor for Hillside. We went through a RFP process. Walsh was the winner. And then the second thing is an omnibus resolution, which is essentially all the documents that relate to the limited liability partnership that we are forming with Walsh, that we are a partner of will be essentially the owner of Hillside during construction. This is something that we use for Easton Ridge and we have used for other construction projects, where essentially the omnibus resolution allows us to move quickly in terms of documents that need to be signed as part of the partnership. So what I'll do is I will allow Stephen to go into the details, because these two things, because time is of the essence related to this project, and we were having extreme difficulty getting these two issues in front of the board related to, because of the schedule change related to COVID-19. They will be on the business meeting for Thursday, as we wanted to take this time at issues to review these with the board. So what I'll do is I'll turn this over to Stephen McMurtry, who can walk through the details and answer some of the questions related to these two items. So Stephen?
Stephen, I just want to add that Walsh is an amazing company. I think what they've done with Northwest Housing Alternatives, everybody I talked to, neighbors, everybody just said they were just fantastic. So I'm excited about that. Go ahead.
Great. I'll just thank you, commissioners, and hope you're all doing well. Thanks for the opportunity to give you these updates. As Rich said, these are two key documents as we move towards our construction closing. In the world of COVID-19, has added an extra level of complexity to a construction closing, which in its best of times can be a bit of a frenetic run to the finish line. And of course, now we've had to retool things with our financing partners. So as Rich mentioned, two things will be coming across for you on consent at the business meeting on Thursday. The first is an omnibus resolution. As Rich mentioned, this is a mechanism that's been executed by the Board of County Commissioners in Clackamas County several times before on previous projects. In layman's terms, it takes all of the financing documents and approval documents associated with our limited partnership and admits them in so we can arrive at a construction closing. Some key components of that omnibus resolution: it also provides delegation of authority to act on behalf of the limited partnership and the general partner, which is the Housing Authority, to the Director of Health, Housing, and Human Services, the Executive Director of the Housing Authority, and myself for issues like executing these documents that have been brought forth by U.S. Bank, Banner Bank, HUD, our own financing in the deal, and then also construction draws as we move forward with construction. That's a key component because of the technical challenges and the timing issues associated with these large construction projects. It's important to be very nimble with our other financing partners, which is why we're suggesting this in the omnibus resolution. This is the same authority that was granted the Housing Authority when we came forward to you and you approved the omnibus resolution for the formation of the limited partnership. So this is extending that forward. I also wanted to point out that the Housing Authority has retained outside counsel from Cantor Taylor, specialists in low-income housing tax credits. They're the ones who have put together our limited partnership agreement with our other financing partners and this omnibus resolution that's coming in front of you. They are our representation for all matters related to the financial closing and forward through the completion of this project. And County Council has reviewed the omnibus resolution as a courtesy to the Housing Authority as well. So with that, I can either move on to the next step or pause there for any questions that might be about this authorizing document.
That's good.
Yep.
If not, I'll move on to the GMP, which is the larger piece of this. It is as Rich mentioned, it's the gross maximum price amendment that is associated with the construction contract. And as Chair Bernard said, we're thrilled to have Walsh Construction on this project. Having worked with them for the past 15 years, I am thrilled with a lot of our contractor relationships, but especially the amazing words that you hear about Walsh Construction have really blossomed during the pandemic as they have worked tirelessly. And a shout out, I'll just take a quick pause to shout out to the entire Housing Authority staff and all associated with this project. Everybody has really come together to help retool and reinvent how the project gets there. County Council has done an amazing job working with us, as well as procurement, to arrive at this GMP amendment. The GMP amendment will has set our total contract price at $12,787,667, which is $174 a square foot. I think in today's climate, that is an excellent number to arrive at for such a robust rehab for the project. The amendment will come before you for execution. And we have built into the project, as documents that have been shared with you already show, some significant contingencies around construction start because of COVID-19. And I just wanted to highlight those quickly for you, then open it up to questions. We are still assuming that if everything stayed the same, that our construction would begin on May 15th. And had COVID-19 not occurred, we would start unit interior rehab shortly thereafter. We are now taking a new road to the rehabilitation of the project. We will close on construction financing on May 15th and would issue a notice to proceed shortly thereafter. But Walsh Construction has completely retooled their construction program to start with elevator work and seismic upgrade work so that we can insulate both staff at the Housing Authority, construction workers, and our population, our resident population, from any commingling whatsoever, and would now push out in the three scenarios that have been presented to you, what we're calling the middle road, which is there are no more off-site tenant relocations. In other words, as tenant relocations may occur for tenant work within the building, it will be handled only by vacant units within the building, so no one has to move off-site. And in addition to that, we would not be beginning those, if we took that route, we would not be beginning those tenant moves until the beginning of July. Now, should the governor's office come forward and or we find direction from the county that we can, move up that tenant unit interior safely, then we may start to do tenant unit interiors as early as sometime in mid-June. But right now we are taking what we're calling the middle of the road contingency. It adds about $490,000 to the project budget, but we were able to retool our budget, prioritize that, and it is being requested that we have these contingencies in place by all of our financing partners, including HUD. So there's a lot of information and all of that, and I'm moving pretty quickly because I know time is of the essence and your time is very important, and I'll open it up to any questions you may have.
Any questions? Ken?
Just one. Do you need a motion to move forward at all, or will this just simply come before us on Thursday?
It will come before you on Thursday. These two documents will come before you on Thursday.
Anybody have issues with that?
Not me.
No? Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Great,
Thank
thank you, H3S team. So next we'll move to the finance team, who similarly have a topic for this Thursday's agenda they wanted to brief you because it is consent for Thursday. So
I thought
Elizabeth
Stephen
Comfort-
had one more thing.
No,
Didn't that-
there's two. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So next, Elizabeth Comfort and Krista Wolf. Please bring them in, Kevin. First, there's a consent agenda item for this Thursday, a board order authorizing finances for new projects and refinancing. Since it's consent, you don't have a chance to comment. So Elizabeth quickly wanted to see if you had any questions about that. I forwarded you the staff report in your packet. So as they're coming online, please be prepared to ask any questions, commissioners.
And turn your mics on.
It just takes time for the system to put them in, that's all. Great. All right. Elizabeth, I keyed off it already. Go ahead to answer a question if you want to say anything about the consent item.
Yes, I just wanted to highlight for a few minutes what we've presented to you on the order. The first part of this 2020 omnibus is a refinance of two current full faith and credit obligations. We are proposing that we include these in this package for interest savings only. If we determine that there is not interest savings on these refinances, they won't be a part of this. The other part includes three new financings. One is for road maintenance facility that we have in the floodplain. It's 20 million, and also the road maintenance fund will be supporting that borrowing. Also, the OSU extension current facility is inadequate, and they have been saving since 2009 and have 8 million in savings, and we are looking for additional 6 million as part of this issuance, and the debt would be paid by revenues from the extension fund. And finally, on this issuance, we are requesting for funding for Gladstone and Oak Grove Library construction. There is an IGA between the Clackamas County and the City of Gladstone, and the land and capital contributions have been agreed upon. And we're looking at an estimated $8 million to be supported by new debt paid out of the general fund. And this proposal is also captured in the financial forecast. I want to add that any funds that we borrow, if there's any premiums or additionals that turn out not to be needed above these 3 projects in the new debt, would be potentially earmarked for any courthouse relocation costs or financial software needs, and those would yet to be determined.
Questions? Kevin?
Is there a motion necessary, or is this something that's going to go on the consent agenda?
It's a consent agenda item, but we wanted to bring it to you in case you did have questions, wanted to discuss it.
And so
Anybody
yeah,
Go
well,
ahead.
it's on the on the 8 million for the libraries. Does that fully fund the Gladstone project and part of the Oak Grove project, or what's the ratio of secure funding?
I know it goes to support both Gladstone and the Oak Lodge Library or Oak Grove Library. And I have Chris Story with me. He's partnering with finance to support this issuance. Chris, are you aware of a percentage between what is at Gladstone and what is at Oak Grove?
I don't have the exact percentage. I would say this number represents what BCS is estimating is necessary to complete the project based on both the contributions from Gladstone, the existing reserves, and then this is the remainder to fill the gap to bring the project to fruition.
Wasn't it 5 million for Gladstone? Right?
That included some degree of valuation for their contribution. You recall they're donating the land where their city hall is. Actually, they're moving this week out of that facility to a new facility, and that parcel will be where the Gladstone branch will be constructed.
So the 5 million included a contribution of the land. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. All right.
So just to pop in, if you could add a later, you can email me or us, the board, what that is. But Chris has used the word project, singular. I'm assuming this is the Gladstone only project because the cost of the potential Oak Grove project is higher and not yet determined either. So I'm just going to presume, and if you can clarify that later in an email today or tomorrow, that'd be great.
I will check in with BCS and just note that my impression, at least, was this was sufficient for both projects, but I will confirm that to the board.
I wish it was. I hope it is.
Well, you might say this is going to be sufficient from this element of funding. Probably that's a better way of saying it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
because there might have to be a vote on the rest of the money.
Right.
All right. Any other questions?
Commissioner Humbertson, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Ken?
Yes. Personally, a favor, can we please follow the raised hand situation? And moving on from that, I had one question for Elizabeth, and that is, assuming we do this refi and the funding is all expended on the projects that you have outlined in your background information, how does this potentially impact the scenario for the courthouse that might be selected, such as a public-private partnership and the financing of that?
This is outside of that. There is an impact to the general fund due to the library funding. So that would impact potential dollars. But how it's also impacting as we talked about with the OSU moving the location, that's freed up the original space for the location of the courthouse. So I'd say in those two fashions, it would be impacting the courthouse.
I think you said relocation money. You didn't say courthouse money.
Correct. Yeah, because
So-
there's going to be several relocations of current services and demolitions that are not considered in the courthouse current package. And so those would need to be funded outside. And so we're looking as if potentially if there's premiums or, additional funding, say if something doesn't come in quite all the way to the debt, we would look to ask to reallocate those funds to those other activities.
I'm not sure you're getting at my concern.
Oh, I'm sorry.
When we had the discussions regarding 5 different scenarios for funding the courthouse, part of the financing of that was as we retired the debt from our various bond issues, that those funds would go towards making our payment on the balance of the courthouse. Since we're doing a refi now for these other projects, and that says to me that extends the length of time that those bond issues are going to continue, rather than them coming off of our debt sheet, if you will, in 2 years or 3 years, and then 6 years and 9 years. How does that impact going forward with a public-private partnership, if that's the one that we select to build the courthouse?
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. That is a great thing to clarify. So in the refinance, we would not change the length of the debt, the current debt, because we have kept in line. Our plan is when those are paid off, that would release those funds to go toward future debt. And so that time frame would remain the same.
Okay, so
Yes,
that was
thank
my
you for
concern.
clarifying.
So you're not extending
No.
out 20 years. We will still retire those debts on schedule, just get a lower interest
Yes,
rate.
absolutely correct. We're just looking to save the county additional funding through lower interest if we can. Yeah.
Always happy to do that. I just wanted to be sure that it didn't impact what could very well be the choice that we need to make to build that courthouse.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin, any other questions?
I believe, Chris Story, do you have a comment there?
I was just going to observe one of the reasons why you're seeing this omnibus approach towards the debt issuance, where you're seeing a refinancing and 3 different specific projects being lumped together, is because we're trying to save on the transaction costs of bond counsel, financial advisors, etc. That may enable us to realize more interest rate savings, but we've made it very specific to our advisors and the bond market generally that we're only going to do it if it doesn't extend the term. So we're definitely mindful of your concerns and making sure the courthouse will continue to be supported going forward.
Yeah, good.
Any other questions?
Commissioner Humbertson?
Do you need a motion to move forward?
No.
No, it's on the consent agenda, but just so we're all good with it. All right, we're good with it.
Great.
Great.
I'm going to ask
you.
Elizabeth and Krista to stay. Next is an audit committee bylaw update. Let me just cut to the chase. Board, you already agreed prior that we could increase the number of public members on the county's audit committee, which is the financial audit committee. The audit committee has reviewed the bylaws, made updates, which are in front of you now, and we're seeking your approval. Sorry, Krista, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think you've covered it all, Gary. We have those in red line edits for you, and there was a request for a policy session, but we thought this would be more expedient.
Probably
Move
just
for
make a
approval.
motion. It's been moved. Is there a second? Ken,
I have a question, but I'll second.
okay, now question.
Item 2.01.12. It's a grammatical error. Request that the board approve the hiring of a firm. You got 2 that's where you only need 1 that.
Thank
Figured
you.
might
I
wanna
will
fix-
correct it.
You get 1 point for that, Ken.
Oh, gee, thanks.
Okay, so
Been
it's
noted.
been moved and seconded. Will you please poll us, Kevin?
Yes, Commissioner Fisher,
That's an aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Where is she? Oh, she's over there. Martha, we can't see or hear you. There, we hear you. Say
No,
aye.
I don't know. Like I said, this has been very difficult this morning with this device. So
Are you
I'm
an
doing the
aye?
best I can. I'm not.
Okay,
Commissioner Humberton,
Aye.
Chair Bernard.
aye. Motion carries unanimously. Next item. Thank you, guys.
Elizabeth and Krista. Commissioners, can you go until 11:45 today? Does that work for the 5 of you?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry about this, but this is the most efficient way to get business done. These are quick updates. We have a lot of updates for you. Okay, let's revisit the internet service provider proof of concept proposal. Please bring in Kevin, Dave Cummings, Dexter, whoever, Scott, whoever else is on the team, Dave DeVore. So commissioners, you agreed to bring this back next week for a conclusion. Since then, staff has provided you the two things you asked for. That is an analysis by our Emergency Operations Center. Also, a quick survey of the telecommunication companies in the county, if their plans have changed based on COVID, if they're going to provide additional services or not. You've seen that information. I am recommending that in the short term, a more immediate solution is to provide Wi-Fi hotspots along our broadband ring that can immediately provide help for those who do not have high-speed internet, but that's not a permanent solution. So this is meant to be a 5-minute update. So commissioners, if you're prepared to make a decision, or we could defer this, but this, please, we don't have time for a full debate. With that, Dave Cummings, do you want to make any comments?
Listen, can you hear me?
Yes.
yes.
Okay, for some reason I can't see you. But anyways, as long as you can see me, that's fine. Yeah, I just wanted comments that I wanted to make. I thought it was a spectacular plan to do hotspots. We've already checked with Jeremy Pietzel in the schools, putting at least 10 hotspots out there. And immediately over the next couple of months, being able to provide free Wi-Fi service so that the kids and people without internet service can be able to get connectivity. So that's a great immediate plan for us, for something for us to do to get that service out there. As for our proof of concept, I just wanted to kind of remind everybody that the proof of concept was, at this time, was not a countywide plan. Originally, we had an RFP out to bring a consultant in, and we ended up bringing in a gentleman that worked on it for several months, and it wasn't satisfactory. So at that time, we decided to do a proof of concept with a couple of partners and maybe an ISP. One was the Kiwanis project, which I believe by the end of next week, we're going to have some people hooked up out in Kiwanis, with Sandy being the ISP. And the others was because of the funding that we currently have, which is low, is to do maybe some business parks. But if we decided we wanted to do a residential area and be an ISP, I think we talked with Paul the other day about going out to Colorado Road, southeast of Sandy, off 211. There's about 160 homes out there. Unfortunately, it's about $450,000 to get out there and hook people up. I don't have that right now. I would have to save that up. It'd take me a while to do that. And then we wouldn't be competing with businesses around the county. And unfortunately, because of what we're in right now, the COVID virus, a lot of the businesses aren't even operational. But a proof of concept is something that you do, and Fort Collins, Colorado did it, and some of the other cities. Something you do as a template while you're getting ready to bring in someone with expertise to be able to write a citywide or a countywide business plan. So what we're proposing is to be able to do the proof of concepts so that when we do go out and get someone to come in to do the total county business plan, it will be a key component of doing that. Now, I also wanted to mention, and we did talk with Paul and Ken and some of the others, that what the county's trying to do countywide with a big county like ours has probably not been done before. Columbia County, Georgia did it in their county, but they were the utility and they already had fiber out to all the homes. So what we're trying to accomplish is a big thing, and it's quite a bit of money to do it. We have no money. So I agree with our great county administrator that's always had great ideas and still does, that we do some hotspots immediately as soon as we can to give some relief out to the public and the kids. And I think the schools are a perfect place to do it because, you know, the kids are out of school right now and there's a lot of parking. But we need to do something, and we need to continue on looking at doing the proof of concepts. And we know that we can be an ISP. If you talk to Scott Brown and Duke Dexter, Scott Brown worked for the city of Sandy and SandyNet. We know how to do it, but we want to be able to do this, to use it as a template so that when we can fund to bring an expert in to do a countywide business plan, which is very extensive, it'll run from $50,000 to $100,000 to do that. But if we can get this next component done, so we can plug that into a countywide plan for how we're going to get access out to everybody.
Hey, Dave, it's a 5-minute update and you've taken almost 5 minutes. I think the hotspot's a great idea. You know, I don't know that we need a countywide business plan. I think we need a business plan, maybe portioned off. And I think an ISP is the way you get the grants. But we're not there yet, and we need some time. And this will give us some time. And that's what I appreciate about the hotspot idea. It really opens up a lot of great opportunities for kids, students, and businesses, frankly, who are nearby. So, Kevin?
Commissioner Savas, then Commissioner Schrader, then Commissioner Humbertson.
5 minutes.
Yeah, well, thank you all, and I appreciate TS staff yesterday, the conversation we had, really good. And I called up Commissioner Humbertson yesterday morning. I'm happy to offer a deep dive on this, you know, in offering some of my mathematical skills and so forth in this area. I support the hotspots, and I would really like to talk more about possibly how, if that could possibly be incorporated in a way that is perhaps more permanent, if you will. And but we used up our half an hour pretty efficiently yesterday. So after the research I've done and some other conversations, I even have more questions. So if Commissioner Humbertson, who's been, you know, dedicating a lot of time and energy on this, is willing and is okay with my deeper dive into this, I'd appreciate it. And I'd like to move forward on the board's goal. I think we can do a plan. And I think after our discussion last Tuesday and yesterday, that some ideas that have been generated out of those discussions between those periods of time, offline discussions, I think there's been some interesting ideas that I think are worth exploring. And because we have limited time, we can't get into that, but I just want to put that out there that let's move forward on the hotspots. And maybe there's a way of incorporating a proof of concept in a way that maybe hasn't really been considered.
I think Ken was next. That guy?
I think Martha was next.
Martha.
So yesterday had after the exam,
Hey, Martha, you don't understand a word you're saying.
Am I breaking up?
That's better.
Okay. So I spent all afternoon yesterday being shunted to 4 different people to try and figure out what's going on with my internet. So I am really feeling much more inclined to do what Gary said, but then to eventually move on with this. So just
Oh, thank you. The rest of what you're saying is in some other language.
well, that's because I have a poor internet connection. Yes, I'm ready to go. Yes. Okay.
All right, thank you. Who is next? Ken.
Yes.
Yes, I'd like to direct my questions to Scott and Duke. So if they come online so they can respond.
Go ahead.
So I like the idea of the hotspots. It's immediate and that gets something off the ground. I think that's an excellent idea. My question is there any reason not to simultaneously do the pilot project, which will be the foundation for moving forward with a much larger business plan, but it gives you some time to develop that larger business plan while you kind of learn how to do what it is we want to do. Does that make sense?
There's no reason we couldn't proceed with both.
Okay. It seems to me that's the way to go. You get a very immediate bang for our effort. Then you get if you want to call it a short to medium term bang for our effort to prove the concept, from which we can get into the business of a large scale plan.
5 minutes.
Going forward. I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah, there's no restriction on us being able to run the two programs simultaneously.
So it sounds like everyone's on with the hotspot. My question is, the ISP, is it just, you just buy an ISP and then you've got it, you can use it wherever, right?
Yes, you buy equipment and then you kind of buy a pipe and then you can redistribute it.
So is the equipment, is that, how much is something like that?
Well,
so that's where it gets complicated. We don't have time to do that. So
yeah.
Let's talk about that another time.
The costs vary. If we're going to do small one, clearly a smaller cost. If we're going to try and do, in theory, if we try to do the whole county, clearly it costs us more money.
Well, the small one.
For the hardware.
If we're just going to do the proof of concept, we can buy the equipment in the range of 10 grand.
Okay. All right. That's all we need to know about that today, but everyone's good with the hotspots. Thumbs up. Okay. So we're good there. All right. Thank you guys. We'll get back to you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
We were supposed to make a decision one way or the other on the proof of concept ISP.
Oh, okay.
Are we going to make that decision?
Gary? Was that your plan today?
My recommendation was hotspots only, but it's your decision, commissioners, if you want to take a vote on yes or no to the POC at this point in time.
I think it complicates this 5-minute discussion, so I'm not ready on that. I want to do that. Ken and I'll sit down and maybe with one of these guys, and I think this complicates today's discussion. I'm good with the hotspot right now. Let's talk about the other stuff. Because I can
that answers my question.
I could see faces, and faces tell me it would complicate today's discussion. Heads nodding and everything. All right, on with the hotspots. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, TS team. So other stuff on the agenda, I'm going to pull the board communications plan. We're living it right now. So commissioners, if you have feedback on that document, please tell your policy advisor and they'll tell me. Next, your business meeting agenda, please read it and tell me if you have questions. I want to ask you your board retreat. It has been postponed originally in March until next Tuesday, April 21st. But I'm going to recommend we postpone it again because I think it's best to do that in person. You all agree?
I don't want to sit in front of a computer and do this.
May we postpone your board retreat until we're able to meet in person?
Yes, Hawaii.
Okay, yeah, Hawaii, yes. All right, next, Chair
We're
Bernard.
not going to Hawaii.
No. Chair Bernard, you wanted to bring forward a request from Metro to financially support a advocacy mailing regarding the supportive housing measure.
What'd you say it was?
It's an education piece. Forgive
Yes,
me.
Metro, Multnomah County, Washington County, Metro are putting out an information piece to the public. We've been asked to contribute 5,000 to 10,000, and I picked the 5 as a contribution. This is for the housing measure. If it passes, it has a significantly positive impact for the county. And I think that as a gesture of support, a $5,000 contribution for the county for this informational piece, which we would review, would be a good investment. Is that a raise a hand or 5, or you want 10,000?
Commissioner Savas.
Well,
Jim, I don't disagree. There's upside if the measure passes as far as providing services to the homeless, and so that I understand. What I'm very nervous about, frankly, is getting into a situation where we're challenged because of advocacy. Gary, you've got firsthand experience back when Lynn Peterson was the chair of Clackamas County. We did a similar thing and we got an ethics violation, I believe, or something of the like filed. So I'm very, very worried of a challenge like that. And I don't want to put one of our goals is to maintain trust with the community, and we don't need any bad press right now.
all right. Anybody else?
Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, so my qualification piggybacks on Paul. So I'm good with moving forward. I mean, 5,000, 10,000, I'm with whatever folks want to do, but I really want to make sure that Stephen is able to review to make sure we aren't crossing any lines, because I am absolutely agree with Paul. We can only give information, which I think is very important for the community to have, but we cannot be in an advocacy role in this.
Right. We agree. Ken, you okay with the 5,000? Okay. Martha? Okay.
Yeah.
And that's me. And Paul, you're probably okay. Just worried about no, he's not. All right. So I just want to add one more thing. We will review it. The challenge always is this. The folks have reviewed it and okayed it and then filed an ethics complaint later, which happens. But I'm not too worried about that. This is not our information piece. It's theirs. And so I'm good with the 5,000. I wouldn't exceed that though. All right. Sounds like we got thumbs up mostly, majority. All right,
Okay.
Gary.
Finally is Commissioner Communications. I know that many of you have to start leaving. Commissioner Schrader and Savas attended the Willamette Falls Legacy Project Partners meeting, if they'd like to give a quick update, and then any other updates you would all like to make.
Okay, I'll let Martha fill in. We had our meeting. We proposed or presented the Metro version of what the plan was for clarity, to lay the groundwork for the meeting, and then the tribes, the Grand Ronde did theirs. The Delta is about $20 to $30 million additional to take the approach that the Grand Ronde wants to pursue, or the property owner. Haven't identified those funds as of yet. The City of Oregon City, Mayor Holliday particularly indicated the city's support for the proposal presented by the Grand Ronde for that extra price tag, but yet no monies. The other issue is that if we don't move quickly, we lose the $12.5 million contribution from the state. So I just pitched the idea of, if that's the momentum and that's the direction that we're headed, then maybe what we need to do is start and maybe take phase 1, and it's phase 1A, and there's a phase 1B, and we just start and just do what we can with the resources we have to get the project moving. But that's a greater discussion that'll come back. Martha, anything you want to add, please?
Nailed it. I'm hopeful it will still move forward. I do know they also have money from, they have a foundation that's been funded as well. But I do think they should just move ahead with the money they have now. And I have the same takeaway you did. So thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Commissioner Communications? Ken?
Yes, there was a meeting with the Fair Board the other day, and some good discussions about where they go from here, given the financial situation. At this point, they've had about $25,000 in cancellation losses. May 15th is their go, no-go date for the garden show. They're a couple of months out from a final decision with respect to the fair. One of the things that they have to do with the rodeo, which of course is with the fair, is make sure that they have an announcer booked and that they have the livestock booked. And at this point, they're not sure how that's going to play out. So everything obviously is in flux. I can tell you, Chair Bernard, that we did have the financial discussion that you were concerned with about worst case scenario. And Greg Parker and I both supported the idea of doing a variety of financial scenarios, including worst case scenario, that everything would have to be canceled. How do you go forward from there? So you had raised that issue earlier today, and they are addressing it.
So I want to add something now that you mentioned the garden show or plant sale.
This is the time of year they have their garden show, and I think they were going to combine it with something else this particular year. And like I say, May 15th is their go, no go.
Yeah, so my question was, is this a plant sale, the one they have outside, or an inside thing?
It's the one they have outside.
Okay, so farmers markets are opening still. Many of those people go to the farmers market. The trick is they should do it. They just have to do the spacing right. You know, the 6 feet and one person in the booth at a time. It will have a negative impact, but that's how the farmers markets are opening. We have one across from our office. Milwaukee's, I believe, opens Mother's Day, and the governor never shut down farmers markets. So just if they could do it if they do the spacing right, and they've got plenty of room to do that.
Well, they are working on the planning, but like I said, the final decision is of go or no go is May 15th.
Yeah. Okay. Who's up next? Paul?
Commissioner Fisher, and then Commissioner Savas.
Commissioner Fisher.
So I know that a few of us were on the call with AOC yesterday, but I wanted to just let folks know that I'm vice chair of the Health and Human Services Committee. We're doing the planning for the call that's going to happen this Friday, and some of the things that are rising to the top are some of the questions that we had today regarding the science behind what we're going to be making decisions to reopen the economy, also continuing questions about the methodology of how PPE is being distributed. And there is this new concept about this collaborative coordination of it's not a public health person, I think it's like a safety net coordinator. And I can just tell you from my perspective, the Tri-County region, it would just muddle up things. We're doing a really good job in doing things, and I don't want us to be overburdened with more, I call them transaction costs of over coordination. But that's just my opinion. I don't know how you guys all feel. I think for the smaller rural counties, really essential that they have somebody coordinating all their pieces, from public health to corrections to transportation to, all of that. But I don't want us overworked. But that, I wanted some feedback on that, but just wanted to let you know that's a conversation.
Catherine was not happy. And she sent back something to Gina to express that. In the Tri-County area, we don't need any more coordination, cooperation, or communication, right, Ken?
Yeah, no, I think we're doing a really good job, but I want to just flag that for folks because that's something that is being discussed. So that's
Thank
all
you.
I have for my liaison communications, other than I continue to do the things. I'm on the phone with Rachel Prusak. I'm also on another call that I absolutely love. It's a call that I don't know how I got on this list. I told Commissioner Savas about it because I thought he'd be really interested. It's with all healthcare providers. It's called ECHO, and I just go on that and listen to what the nurses and the doctors and what they're all talking about and are concerned about. It's a wealth of information. It's not a call I'm comfortable participating in because it's way beyond my expertise, but it's really good information. Paul's got the information. It's on a Thursday at noon. If anybody else wants it, I'm pretty sure we could get you on there. It's really great information. So.
Thank you. Who is next?
Paul was.
Paul.
Yeah, I gave, not really giving my update as so much as I am just following up on the discussion about the fair and the garden show and the farmer's market. Is there any guidance maybe if Mr. Mac, oh yeah, Mr. McElroy is there. Is there any guidance on that we can get validation that that's okay? Because I could see some criticisms of that. I can also definitely see the need, right? But how is that going to be, not necessarily policed, but how is that going to be overseen? Because those farmer markets are awfully cramped. I just went to the hardware store the other day on Sunday, and the line to get in, because they were only letting so many people into the store, was so overwhelming, and I just left. It was just too much for me to absorb. So even then, that created a long line, and I don't know if there is a safe place for people to set that up and keep the social distancing in place. So has there been any discussion at the state level about those kinds of events?
I think with the governor's order, Paul, is that if it's not specifically prohibited, it is allowed, provided they do maintain the social distancing. And there are stores, and all stores that do stay open are supposed to have somebody specifically designated to enforce that internally. So I do know, Jim's right, there is the farmers markets are taking place and are being planned, but there will be social distancing being enforced there.
Okay, that's all I have for today.
So I want to add something before we leave. I think there's other people. The strategy session is canceled for today. And who's up next?
Commissioner Humbertson.
Ken.
I'll be brief. I just went to the grocery store yesterday. One way in, one way out. Guidance inside the grocery store to minimize the traffic bumping into each other, that sort of thing. Had no problem at all. It just had to be a little bit patient. Distancing in the checkout line without any problem. So I think these things are workable, but it does take a little bit of management. They had people at the given entrances to the grocery store and exit to the grocery store to make sure people follow the protocols, and all the employees were masked. So it's a workable situation, assuming we don't, assuming the curve remains flattening as we've been trying to do.
Martha, right?
I don't know if you can hear or see me, but I'm going to be spending lunch trying to get this laptop set up to see if that improves. At this point, Ken, I'm all for an ISP and high-speed internet. What to say?
All right.
After this experience, but let's go with the hot spots. Okay, to start.
Okay. I'm going to just, the only thing I want to say about the farmers market, there's a statewide farmers market association. They've been discussing this for months. The Portland farmers market is open. I talked to a vendor and he says the way they've organized is very good and very safe, or what appears to be safe. And that, I used to run one, so I'm not involved anymore, but I went by Oregon cities last week and they really have them separated well. So with that, Gary, anything else?
We are done. Thank you, commissioners, for the marathon session. We got all your business done.
1:30.
Yes, the link for the 1:30 session is in the 1:30 session in your calendars.
Thank you.
Right.
See you later.